a special provision in the JJ Act. Now this is something very laudable, this is something very good, which is a code of its own initiative. And the Supreme Court order in itself was a brilliant order, 18-page order, very well written, and considering every aspect and matter taken up suo moto, no court assistance, and on one date the matter was decided and the order was released next day. All childcare institutions, all juvenile justice boards, all children's courts, high courts, states informed, and the order to be circulated in all languages all over the country. This is something very unique about our court. The system, the way in PILs or court initiatives they can take on things, it's very creditable. Hello, Malvika ji, I can see you there. Malvika ji, you're not audible. I can't hear you. I can see you, but I can't hear you.
On Kalan we have unmuted for some time.
Okay, fine, good enough.
देखो जी होने Times of India च खबर आई है 2 lawyers in Madras donate 1 rupee for the welfare of the bar council और एक ने 10 रुपए देता है. So all 3 are being issued certificates by the Bar Association of Madras as the star donors for this wonderful effort.
Chalo, the mighty drops of water make an ocean.
The news है Times of India the latest. 2 Madras High Court lawyers donate rupee 1 for lockdown relief. Bar Council to give them certificate of appreciation being star donors.
Everybody makes their own start in their own way.
Lothra sahab, wonderful experience this time ch eh hoya ki every time you get different participants.
Well, that's the novelty of this process. And if one has a choice, one listens to whatever one opts for. And you have the option of having the best brilliant minds who can give you the maximum possible variety in different fields. So there are different areas in which different people have an interest. So they take on in that area whatever it is. And I think there are a lot of commercial laws. There are a lot of other areas. I got a invite to take part in a virtual book launch in the US. This is the Harvard section in the US, which does talks. So this talk and the book release is virtual. So now you will have discussions and even book releases by virtual processes, because gathering people will not be possible in good times to come. But regardless, it still goes on, because and this lawyer is an advisor to the British courts, and he even advocates that a time may come when legal assistance may be done away with. Shall we do away with lawyers is also a call which is being propagated. But these are different views from different people.
Phone देंगे इसमें. Vrinder भाई तो मिला के दे दो.
So Vikas ji, what is the number you have got now?
Sir, 453 ਹੋਏ ਆ 26 ਸ਼ਾਮ ਵਾਲਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਸੈਸ਼ਨ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਨਾ ਥੋੜਾ ਜਿਹਾ ਮੁਸ਼ਕਿਲ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਹੈ, ਇਸੀलिए 4 ਤੋਂ ਅਸੀਂ 5 ਕੀਤਾ ਸੀ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਦੁਪਹਿਰੇ ਉਹ ਬੰਦਾ ਕਹਿੰਦਾ ਲੋਕਡਾਊਨ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਲੌਕਡ ਕਰ ਰਿਹਾ.
Okay.
Sir, 4 is better. In fact, if I suggest you, 4 o'clock is better for the reason 5 o'clock the weather gets better and everyone wants to come out. In fact, I myself play with my kids. My kids are watching me from outside that when are you coming out? So I told them after a little while. So 4 o'clock generally is better time according to me. Rest as per everyone's convenience.
Volume did pata ki karo tusi?
Vishal, it's a little hot as of now today. Yesterday the weather was very good, but I think it's better if it cools down and what's in a hurry in the evening.
Honestly speaking, sir, I have not even switched on the air conditioner as of now. I'm on one. I'm on a fan of just one number. Even if I could just point it out and show you, it's just like counting the revolutions.
It's advocated that COVID and air conditioners don't gel. So I think we should.
That's true. That even otherwise is true, but over here, in fact, out here, the weather is pretty beautiful. I play badminton every day at about this time itself.
Great.
तो बार-बार मैसेज आ रहे हैं कि to mute everyone I would just like to explain 5 o'clock is the session. Before that, सारे नहीं तो चुपचाप तस्वीरां देखते रहेंगे. कमल हसन की मूवी याद आ जाएगी. I'm just forgetting the name. ਉਹਦੇ ਅੰਦਰ it was the first movie ਜਿੰਦੇ ਅੰਦਰ ਕੋਈ ਵੀ voice ਨਹੀਂ ਸੀ. So keeping them faces ਇਸ ਤੋਂ ਵਧੀਆ ਮਲਹੋਤਰਾ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਨੂੰ other side ਵਿੱਚ ਸੁਣ ਲਈ ਔਰ ਮੁਫਤ ਚ ਸੁਣਨਾ ਤਾਂ ਮਲਹੋਤਰਾ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਨੂੰ ਵੈਸੇ ਹੀ ਟ੍ਰੀਟ ਹੁੰਦੀ.
ਮਲਹੋਤਰਾ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਕੱਲੇ ਕੱਲੇ ਚਾਹ ਪੀ ਰਹੇ हैं.
Well. I'm so sorry that I can't share it with you.
नहीं, we are having virtual tea with you.
And
We are having virtual tea with you.
this is the only stimulant available in this time of the day.
और मल्होत्रा साहब ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਸ਼ੇਅਰ ਕਰਾਂਗਾ ਨਾ, ਲਾਈਕ ਵਿਸ਼ਾਲ ਵਾਸ ਸੇਇੰਗ 4 ਵਜੇ ਕਰ ਦੋ. ਹੁਣ ਕਈ ਬਹੁਤ ਅੱਛਾ ਸਪੀਕਰ ਹੋ ਜਾਏ, we have to go by the convenience. ਸਿਧਾਰਥ ਲੂਥਰਾ has just agreed, ਮਤਲਬ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਮੀਟਿੰਗ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲੇ ਸਿਧਾਰਥ ਲੂਥਰਾ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਅਪਾਇੰਟਮੈਂਟ ਫਿਕਸ ਹੋ ਗਈ ਹੈ.
Wonderful.
ਹਾਂ, he said I am agreed, ਪਰ ਕਹਿੰਦਾ morning ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਸਾਡੇ ਕੋਰਸ ਖੁੱਲ ਜਾਣਗੇ, ਸ਼ਾਇਦ I will not take the session in the morning.
sir, having virtual tea.
ਤੇ
Yes.
Only on this thing, na? Zoom, kya hai? They are watching.
Anybody, I think whatever speaker you get from any outstation, you should agree to whatever time
You're also sitting there.
that person concerned.
मामी जी का फोन आया सी.
Hmm?
मामी जी
चलो
का
ठीक.
That should not be an
Good
limiting
idea.
factor.
ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਪਾਈ ਰੱਖਿਆ 4-5 ਦੇ ਕਰੋਨਾ ਪੇਸ਼ੈਂਟਸ ਦੇ
Hmm.
ਤੇ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਇਸ ਡਾਕਟਰ ਨੇ ਮੇਰਾ ਲੈ ਕੀਤਾ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਕਰੋਨਾ
ਮਲਹੋਤਰਾ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਅੱਜ ਪਾਰਟਿਸਿਪੈਂਟਸ ਆ ਰਹੇ ਹਨ, ਪਤਾ ਚੱਲਦਾ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਪੈਨ ਇੰਡੀਆ ਪ੍ਰੈਜ਼ੈਂਸ ਬਹੁਤ ਹੈ.
Well, I circulate
Good
what I write,
publicity going on.
so it is important.
Good publicity going on.
It's going.
Global law बन गया ना घर बैठे बैठे. Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
ਮਲਹੋਤਰਾ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਪਿੱਠ ਵੀ ਮੋੜ ਲੋਗੇ, ਦਿਖ ਰਹੇ ਕੁਝ ਖਾ ਰਹੇ ਹੋ.
The day I'm on the phone, this is the call.
Malotra साहब ने सुसु आ गया लग. Got to it that toilet where I used to take bath. अच्छा. चलो ठीक है, okay. Bye.
Vikas, can we start?
Sir, we are still 3 minutes there.
There's still 3 minutes there. Dot on.
ਸਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ ਸਾਰੇ when we have seen the keynote speakers, eventually I realized they are more punctual, and that is one of the reasons they are more successful than us.
Yes. Yes, I think so. You see, because
बंद करता हूँ.
ultimately, you may also try a discussion rather than a speaker. Have an interactive discussion with 3 or 4 people speaking and pitching in your own views. So that may also be an option.
So I was just sharing. So that day, Mr. Siddharth Luthra would come on Friday. That is at 6 p.m. Law on bails. Law on bails, because he's a known criminal lawyer. So we asked him to pitch in for something on.
Very good. Mr. Luthra is an omnibus lawyer. He can deal with all subjects.
So he said, I don't have the time. If you want, I can only speak at 6 o'clock. मैं कह जी, तुझे राती भी 9 बजे कहोगे तब भी शायद हाउसफुल जाऊगा.
So evenings are also fine, because there is no commitment, there is no schedule to follow. So one can easily make a little chip in. And now that Chandigarh is going to be a containment for the next till the 2nd of May, I think this will be the best mode of communication and best mode of interaction which will go on.
So जितना ही थोड़ी चाह खत्म होएगी 5 बज जाएंगे, फिर स्टार्ट कर लेना.
नहीं चाह तो चलती रहेगी, don't worry.
We have got 60 seconds for your tea.
No problem.
Your time starts now.
Fair enough. So you got, I hope you don't have a stopwatch on you.
I have on my mobile.
So I can see, Vikas, how many people have we got on board as of now?
Right now 36.
36. Chalo, they'll catch on slowly.
ਹੁਣ ਐਕਚੁਅਲੀ ਸਪਨ ਨੇ ਕਨਵੀਨੀਅੰਟ ਇੰਨਾ ਕਰ ਲਿਆ, ਲੋਕੀ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਬਾਅਦ ਚ ਵੀਡੀਓ ਆ ਜਾਣੀ ਫੇਸਬੁੱਕ ਤੇ ਦੇਖ ਲਾਂਗੇ, YouTube ਤੇ ਦੇਖ ਲਾਂਗੇ.
I can see Mr. Singhal also, nice and shining. Singhal sir, good evening.
ਸਿੰਗਲ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਕਿੱਥੇ ਗਏ?
ਹਾਂਜੀ ਸਰ,
Anji,
ਕੀ ਹਾਲ ਹੈ ਸਰ?
very good, excellent.
Long time no see sir.
Let us keep the talk muted and within control.
ਚਲੋ let's start.
Definitely.
Let's start.
Sir. Start sir. Welcome
Okay.
sir, welcome.
Okay,
Welcome,
thanks a
sir.
lot. Thanks a lot. The subject on which, first of all, I would like to thank Vikas and his team for organizing this excellent and very well thought of mode of talking and interacting, because this is a difficult time for all of us. And we all need to keep update, we all need to keep in touch, and we all need to keep exchanging our views. We must interact in whatever way we can. We must share. I write a lot and I circulate it as best as I can. I'm on my 9th book, The Global Indian in the Law, and this time has given me to introspect and think and look at all possible issues which I deal with professionally and academically. Fortunately, speaking to you is a part of my routine now, because I regularly lecture in national law universities. I lecture in the Chandigarh Judicial Academy. I go to the Judicial Academy in Bhopal. So it's a very good way of sharing your experiences and views. And fortunately for me, I think that this is not only just speaking, it's when you interact with people, you learn a lot. You learn that there is another side to the story, which is very important at times. So friends, with this brief introduction, I come to the topic on which...
1 minute, I will be cutting you short. Just since few people have joined just now, we have muted everybody. Anybody who wants to pose a question to Mr. Malhotra, it will be taken up after he completes his talk or a session, we can say.
And to have the maximum number of questions, we will keep questions to one question per person, possibly 2 minutes per person, so that we can have more speakers and more people.
Malhotra sir, we will all have 90% questions will be posted on the chat box.
Okay.
In case anybody feels convenient, he will post it on the chat box that he wants to talk personally to you, then he will be unmuted.
And let us limit, if I have the consent of all, we will limit our interactions to 2 to 3 minutes per person, so that we can have more perspectives. And if anybody has a larger perspective, I'm sure we can take it up later in a bigger way.
Sir, 2-3 minutes hoega nahi. Question will be hardly. Everybody feels short of writing because vakeel hai sare, stenographer aajkal hai nahi.
Fair enough. So whatever be it, 2 to 3 minutes per person of interaction, so that we can have more people to speak. Is that fine?
Yes. ਵਿਕਾਸ ਜੀ ਸਭ ਨੂੰ ਮਿਊਟ ਕਰਕੇ ਨਾ ਇੱਕ ਵਾਰ ਮਲਹੋਤਰਾ ਜੀ ਨੂੰ ਕੱਲਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਅਨਮਿਊਟ ਕਰ ਲਓ ਬਸ.
ਮਲਹੋਤਰਾ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਤਾਂ ਮਿਊਟਡ ਚ ਵੀ ਸੁਣਾਈ ਦੇ ਜਾਣਗੇ, ਡੋਂਟ ਵਰੀ.
Because you don't have to pull.
ਸਰ ਵੱਡੇ ਭਰਾ ਹੋ, ਕਦੀ ਵਾਰ ਮੌਕਾ ਮਿਲ ਜਾਂਦਾ. ਚਲੋ.
Just to that. You have the liberty all the time, don't worry.
Thank you, sir.
So I'm unmuted by the host.
Yeah.
You answer, you can go ahead.
Shall I? Okay, shoot.
Yeah.
So friends, the topic of today is interparental child removal, custody issues and solutions. Now friends, this is an area which I have been working on professionally since 1986, when I got my first client whose child was removed by her spouse and brought to India. And we never recovered the child because it was a reverse removal. It was a removal to India. The child was a foreign national. The lady was of Indian origin, but a foreign national. And she never found the child. But she carried on, and it took her about 10 years to find the child. And then when she went back to England after recovering the child in the US, she formed an organization called Reunite. Reunite today is the biggest NGO in the world, which helps parties reunite children, and which assists parents in relocating the children, so possibly they can think of in coming back. Now, two things strike me to very start with very as a matter of start or as a matter of initiation. I was reading a Supreme Court notice of 18th of April, where the Chief Justice of India has brought to the attention the notice of the bar that cases, short cases, cases regarding death penalty, and surprisingly, family law matters, which are ready and in which counsel are willing, will be posted for hearing before the 24th. At least 4 high courts have issued suo motu notices in family courts looking into domestic violence. I was talking to my friend Mrunalini Deshmukh in Mumbai, and she sent me a piece where she says she's giving online advice on issues in the matrimonial front. Now, in this realm, there is a small area of children. India does not recognize or identify interparental child removal, whether domestically or whether internationally, as a wrong or as an offense. So because it is not identified as an infringement of a right, it does not have a remedy, and consequentially, we have to resort to conventional proceedings under the Guardian and Wards Act, whereby a parent has to seek guardianship and custody, or if it is a case of a foreign court order, or even domestically at times, the remedy of the writ of habeas corpus is invoked. So this is conventionally the way we handle things, and the flip side of it is that since there is no statute law, the law on the subject is all formulated through precedents. So we go back to 1984 in Surinder Kaur's case, where Justice Chandrachud, in the celebrated judgment of a case from England, had held that the child should go back. We follow this in 1987. We go up. Then in Dhanvanti Joshi, we make a change. We say, no, the child will not go back. And then again, we move up to the Supreme Court decision in Ravichandran, where in a petition under 32, the child is sent back to the US. Then we have the judgment by Justice Thakur in Suryavadanan, where the Supreme Court laid down 3 principles. One is the theory of first strike, that is, whichever court takes cognizance first will proceed first. The principle of comity of courts, that is, respect for each other. Then the doctrine of the jurisdiction of closest contact. Whichever jurisdiction is the closest contact with the child should take on. This judgment is watered down in Nityanand Raghavan and Kanika Goyal. The 2 principles of theory of first strike and comity of courts are watered down, and only jurisdiction of closest contact is left. Now, after that, subsequently, there have been 2 or 3 more judgments of the Supreme Court, Lahari, Sakhamuri. I have myself dealt with one matter, and now we have a child-centric jurisprudence. So in matters of child custody, courts are now looking on to the child. I was able to bring forth successfully some issues relating to the child by pressing on the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child. Now, there are 2 conventions on children principally at stake. One is the Hague Convention on Civil Aspects of International Child Abduction internationally, which India has not signed. But secondly, we have the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, which India has signed, and which works domestically and which works internationally. Now, if we have to give teeth to an international convention, we have to make an enabling law within the Indian system so that the legislation gets force. So to implement the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, we amended the Juvenile Justice, Care or Protection in Children Act 2010 and now of 2015. We also made the Commission for Protection of Child Rights Act 2005, and we also enacted other child laws in the shape of POCSO, in the shape of right to education, etc., etc. Now, principally, what happened on India signing the UNCRC? The best interest of the child, the rights of the child, got defined in the JJ Act, the best interest of the child is now finding a definition in the JJ Act 2015. Now, regardless of a child being in conflict with law or being a child in nature of care and protection, the definition of the best interest of the child has been enlarged in a beneficial way in interparental child removal custody disputes also. And now the best interest of the child is finding a meaningful expression through the judgments by virtue of the definition expounded in the JJ Act. This I see as a positive side. So with this concept of the best interest of the child and the rights coming in a child-centered jurisprudence, we are now looking at the child and not the rights of the parties. So if there is an issue concerning the child, it can be brought up in an ancillary relief by virtue of an application under Section 26 when we are in a petition under the Hindu Marriage Act, be it be divorce, be it be restitution, be it be judicial separation or whatever. But in case there is a petition exclusively, let us say under the Guardian and Wards Act, read with the Hindu Minority and Guardianship Act, then in that situation, we look at the rights of the child only. Now, just to fill you in very briefly, the Hindu Minority and Guardianship Act, which is the statutory legislation concerning all rights of minority and guardianship regarding children, does not have a statutory remedy to invoke to reach a court. So whenever you need to sort out issues concerning the custody, the best interest and visitation and other issues relating to the child, you have to invoke the Guardian and Wards Act read with the Hindu Minority and Guardianship Act. The Hindu Minority and Guardianship Act says that it is supplemental to the Guardian and Wards Act. So the overriding factor, it may be a debatable issue, there may be two views, but I personally think that the principles laid down in the Guardian and Wards Act lay down principally how the issues to be decided. But the underlying key factor, keynote consideration in both the legislations is that the best interest and the welfare of the child shall be the paramount consideration, and it will be on the basis of the child's interests that the matter will be settled and decided. So it is in this perspective that now courts have started looking at issues like joint parenting plans, sit-home parents, shared parenting, be it within the country, be it outside the country, or by whatever means. So you may have situations and instances where within the country or across the country, parents may be dividing the time with children if they are not compatible in whatever ways possible. We haven't reached that development in jurisprudence so far. But I think with changing times and contact being less and less possible, we may have to relook at a lot of laws. Now, it is in this perspective that being a member of the International Academy of Family Law Lawyers, as a part of a group, Australian family law lawyers have circulated something very interesting. Now, just to fill you in, Australia is a jurisdiction in which there is a Family Code of Australia with about 45 courts, both at the first and the appellate levels, and there is a separate Chief Justice of the Family Code of Australia. So their family court regime is totally independent from the other courts. Now, in this perspective, the Family Court of Australia has come out with Practice Directions 2020 for COVID exclusively. So they have rewritten the entire procedure of the family court by issuing about 30-page practice direction, and starting from filing to the medium and method of instituting documents, face-to-face protocol, court hearings, telephone hearings, video conferencing hearings, border contact controls. They have dealt with everything in it. It's a beautiful piece of paper. Hong Kong is looking to adapt to it because they think that even this kind of a structure can be adapted to the Hong Kong jurisdiction. Now this brings us to the Indian perspective. Where are we? How will we go about it? How will we handle child custody issues? I am stepping out of the normal conventional method because this is something which is going to engage us in the future. I do not foresee travel cross-border or maybe even within the country, at least for the next 6 months. Now, the Family Courts Act 1984, as everybody knows, leaves it open to the states to make family courts wherever they want to. We haven't got a lot of them in Punjab and Haryana, but they are coming up. They've not been notified in most places, but they are coming up. But Delhi, Bombay, Kerala, Madras are jurisdictions which have developed family courts in a very extensive way. I happen to deal with as a resource person I have the benefit of going to the Judicial Academy in Bhopal. So you get to see family court judges who are very advanced in their thoughts in dealing with the family law jurisprudence. Now, under the Family Courts Act 1984, it may surprise you that the judge is free to coin his own procedure. He is not bound by evidence. He's not bound by the Indian Evidence Act formalities. He can follow the CPC, but he's free to coin his own procedure. And like the Industrial Disputes Act, under the Family Courts Act, unless a lawyer is allowed, the lawyers are not required. They need not appear. Likewise, the family court is free to engage on experts who may be experts, psychological experts, who may be medical experts or whatever experts. So friends, this is the time now for the Family Courts Act 1984 to be relooked at in devising a procedure of custody issues and sorting out problems of interparental child removal issues, be it domestically or be it globally. I say so because the Guardian and Wards Act 1890 is an outmoded piece of legislation which I think needs to be replaced by something more recent in point of time. The Law Commission has given 2 reports suggesting changes, but we seriously need to relook at the Family Courts Act, look at the Guardian and Wards Act, and bring in something which is more recent in terms of shared parenting, child rights, and issues which are at par with the world. Let us not forget that we are 1.3 billion living in 29 states, 7 union territories, and spread over 3.28 million square kilometers. We have a population of 30 million non-resident Indians who are one way or the other connected to the homeland. So we have a marriage solemnized in India according to the provisions of the Hindu Marriage Act, but it is sought to be dissolved outside. Can it be dissolved? No, the Hindu Marriage Act has extraterritorial application, and if one of the spouses is not agreeable, the marriage cannot be dissolved. And if it is dissolved, you are still married in India, but you are divorced abroad. But that's fine. But what happens to the children? How do you deal with the children? If a child is brought to India violating, let's say, a foreign court order, should the child go back? Should the domestic courts decide? In the perspective of movement being very little in times to come now, and parties wanting to avoid contact, we may have to look at a child rights jurisprudence in an absolutely new perspective in the coming times to come. I say so because you cannot let a child grow up with one or another parent and let the child face consequences which may be created by time, which may be created by hurdles of movement, or which may be created by jurisprudential issues. In these times to come, if a child is segregated with one parent, you will also see issues psychologically coming up of parental alienation syndromes. We are already seeing that violence in the matrimonial home may be precipitated by reasons of sitting at home, financial disabilities, economic issues, and other problems which forcibly require you to stay in one environment. So in this scenario, it will become very important for us to perhaps look at putting in the entire child rights jurisprudence, particularly relating to custody issues, in a different box. And fortunately, the Family Courts Act 1984 gives the freedom to the family court to devise a procedure whereby the family court can coin its own method and its own procedure on a case-to-case basis in devising so. But I think what we will need is, we will need consistency. We will need to document, and we will need to put everything in black and white. And this is where the judicial academies will come in. Probably the need of the hour will be that the Judicial Academy of India in Bhopal should devise an e-module and circulate it to all the high courts and the family courts to be watered down ultimately, or wherever there are no family courts, to the respective court sort of district judges or registered district judges, to perhaps look at handling of family court matters in a different perspective relating to child-centric jurisprudence in an atmosphere where we cannot have the presence of parties. Now, I must tell you all that this is not an alien concept as of now. I have been a practitioner in this field for 36 years now. Settling matrimonial disputes without presence of parties is permissible. We have n number of judgments now, both of our High Court and of other courts, whereby presence of parties can be exempted and waived when parties are abroad. How is this done? To start with, a petition can be filed through a power of attorney holder if a spouse is abroad. The power of attorney holder can be a family member. At the time of video conferencing, the litigant can be identified by the power of attorney holder on video conferencing. And in matrimonial matters, consent can be recorded by video conferencing, with the power of attorney stepping holder and identifying the litigant and the court proceeding. This is permissible now. And as far as the settlement is concerned, if there is a settlement arrived at in a foreign jurisdiction, that settlement may be a part of a foreign court proceeding. But if that settlement is independently placed as a part of the, let us say, the section 13B petition or a matrimonial settlement before an Indian court, it can be incorporated and made a part of the Indian decree or the Indian proceeding, and thereby it can get teeth for implementation in the Indian court system. So video conferencing and resolution of matrimonial matters is a permissible method in the Indian existing system without going very far. But then, should it be made mandatory? Should it be made compulsory? No. I think the better way of doing it would be, as I have expressed it already in one of my write-ups, we can give the option to, the court can give the option to the party. If the party wants to opt for video conferencing, the matter can be resolved by video conferencing. It can be domestically also. Maybe there may be a situation where within the country also, parties may not be in a position to visit the court. In that situation also, we can resort to video conferencing. So how do we do it? Have fixed days for video conferencing and have fixed days for conventional hearings, or have 4 hours or 6 hours of hearing by conventional methods and 2 hours post lunch for video conferencing. This can be a possible method. Delhi, Mumbai, Chennai, most of the jurisdictions have very good family courts. The best family courts are in Delhi. I happen to go there. All the family courts are housed. Now, Tees Hazari, Karkadoma, Patiala House, then Saket, every building of a civil court has an adjoining building in which there is a family court building, and in that family court building you have a family court judge, maybe one, maybe two, with a counselor and all other infrastructural facilities, and in that there are video conferencing rooms also, and things can work out. Now, if video conferencing doesn't work out, there can be methods resorted to of an example which Mr. Chafra has set up, let us say Zoom. If this technology is not acceptable for whatever reasons, then there can be alternative means of communication. But the point to be made is that we cannot leave child rights in a limbo. We cannot say that rights of children shall be kept in abeyance. We cannot say that matters relating to custody and matters relating to disputes arising out of children should not be resolved or should not be settled just because hearings are not possible. I am not at all in favor of the process of saying very emergent matters only. I have been a witness to proceedings in Mumbai and in Kerala, whereby three judges are holding court, matters are being heard and resolved. Maybe there has to be a system of prioritization, but we cannot shut out access to justice. We have to provide access, and in matters relating to children and in matters relating to the family, it's very important that the process should go on. We cannot stop it. And while we are thinking, and since lockdowns in most jurisdictions are going to continue for 15 days, I think this is a thinking time, and this is a time to evolve methods on how to go forward. We need to come out with methods and processes by which we can implement this process of having child rights effectively monitored. Now, I was a part of the Hague Committee headed by Justice Bindal, in which there were 6 honorable judges, 6 government officers. I was the only lawyer on the committee. We heard people worldwide, and that was only possible because of video conferencing. So we gave them links, and we would hear them. Their parents in different jurisdictions were heard by us. We came out with a
How can I know?
We came out with a 2-volume report. We have submitted.
ਮਲਹੋਤਰਾ ਜੀ ਨੂੰ ਅਨਮਿਊਟ ਕਰੋ ਜੀ।
The host is muted. Okay, now can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Malhotra sahab, you can unmute yourself. Hello. Malhotra ji.
Can you hear me now?
Could you repeat it? Because for some time you were muted out.
Okay, now I was on the Hague Committee. Did you miss that out?
Yes,
Hello?
that. Thereafter it was muted.
Okay, so I was saying that I was on the Hague Committee, where the only way to get the views and perspectives of people all over the world was to talk to them. Now, we could possibly not visit any other place other than Bangalore or Delhi, where most of the people could connect. So sittings were held in Delhi, Chandigarh, and in Bangalore, and we spoke to parents, left-hand parents all over the world, and we were able to gather perspectives, issues, and problems faced by people, by virtue of which different views could be expressed to us, which helped us put across a 2-volume report and a bill which we have submitted to the government for proposal.
Ek minute. Is he audible to everyone? Because I've received a message that he's not audible.
Can everybody hear me?
Because to me it's perfect.
Perfect. It's okay. Bedi sahab, you're okay?
Yes, sir.
Right, sir. Thank you.
So the bill is there. Now, legislation may still be far away. Whether we will have a bill which defines wrongful removal or retention of a child. Now, the only definition of wrong. First of all, child abduction is not a phrase used in any legislation vis-a-vis a parent. There have been instances where Delhi High Court recently held a parent guilty of child abduction, but the question yet to be decided by the Supreme Court where the matter is pending is, could a parent be held guilty of child abduction? That is again a separate issue. But the fact of the matter is, I think it is an offense in the civil jurisdiction. You cannot take it in the realm of criminal jurisdiction. It would be totally wrong. Even the Hague Convention on Civil Aspects of International Child Abduction 1980, though it uses the phrase child abduction in the title, but when it comes to the definition, the crunch is wrongful removal or retention. And wrongful removal or retention is defined as a process by which a parent who is exercising a right of custody or access is deprived of that right or access when the child is wrongfully removed or retained by another parent, and the other parent has no access, no right, no visible process by which he can take care of the child. So it is a purely civil consequence. Now, if we were to bring in this definition, the bill will go to Parliament, it will take time. So how do we go about it now? I think the best possible way I found was in a matter which I did recently in the Delhi High Court, where without going into the details of the case, where I was able to persuade and convince the Delhi High Court to order a return of 2 children back to a foreign jurisdiction, implementing the rights of the parent and also the foreign court order. But what is the rider which the Delhi High Court put to me? The Delhi High Court said, we will send the children back provided you fulfill all these conditions. The mother will not be separated from the children. The mother will not be prosecuted for removing the children wrongfully, because in US, child removal is a federal offense. The mother will be provided for with all facilities till she's back on her own. The mother will be set up, will be allowed to keep the children with her. The father shall not live with the family. So there were about 10, 12 conditions, and the father will provide for financially till the mother is able to go back to work. So I was able to fulfill all these conditions. Then I was told by the Delhi High Court to go and get this order made a part of the US court order, which technically means I had to get a mirror court order, meaning I had to get the Delhi High Court order made a part of the US court order, and this is called a mirror order jurisprudence. Luckily for me, the Delhi High Court order was mirrored by the US court. The matter did go to Supreme Court also, and the Supreme Court, in a way, laid down fresh issues and sorted out the matter in an amicable way and directed the parent with the children to go back to the US. Meanwhile, the family court had also decided, and it was held that it was in the best interest of the children to be with both parents. So friends, in times to come, this mirror order jurisprudence, working through a principle of comity of courts, may be the way forward. So if we are able to have mirror orders from our jurisdiction to another jurisdiction, and from foreign jurisdictions to the Indian jurisdiction, and courts respecting each other's orders by the internationally well-known principle of comity of courts, we may have a method of children moving from one jurisdiction to another jurisdiction. This is as far as the international scenario is concerned. Even within the country, if we are able to devise a formula whereby children can be with both parents by reasons of shared parenting or custody with each other, it might be a workable formula. So this is largely where the things are in as existing today. And it is in this perspective that a time has now come to introspect on children's rights and think of jurisprudentially in a child-centric interest on how we are to deal with children in these tough times. There may be psychological issues, there may be issues concerning economic reasons, there may be issues concerning travel, there may be issues concerning education. Which is going to be the best place for educating children is going to be a very big question now. Is the West going to be a preferred destination for education of children and therefore go back to a foreign jurisdiction? It can't be said. So there will be a plethora of issues and propositions which will now come forth in such a big way that we will perhaps need to rejig and redo all this entire exercise. We have not developed a family law jurisprudence in the strictest sense, like the English pattern. England has a family law division. Canada, Australia, most European courts have dedicated family law judges. We also have this concept, but the Family Courts Act 1984 has not led to development of a family law jurisprudence in the sense that there are dedicated people looking into this issue globally. There may be people, there may be individual judicial officers in certain jurisdictions who are very empowered and very engineered. I know quite a few of them in other parts of the country. But we will need, particularly in the north, beyond Delhi, we will need to look at this very seriously, because these matters will be on the rise now. And only if we are prepared to handle them in the perspective of the law being available, then we will be able to succeed. Because the Guardian and Wards Act 1890 doesn't lead us too much. It's a very it's an anomaly in itself. You are forced to seek guardianship and exclusive custody of your natural born child by invoking the procedure of the Guardian and Wards Act. Now, on the face of it, it seems very anomalous that you wish to become a guardian to your own natural born child when you are the natural guardian. Under Section 6 of the Hindu Minority and Guardianship Act, the father and after him the mother is the natural guardian, though the Supreme Court says that both are equal. So once both parents are natural guardians of children, what is the need for a person to go to the guardian judge under the Guardian and Wards Act 1890 to become guardian to his natural born child? So this doesn't rhyme with the parental rights emerging in a jurisprudence of this today. Why have we not amended? Why have we not looked at the legislation to provide proper judicial redressal insofar child rights is concerned? That is a question which Parliament will answer. But fortunately for us, the Supreme Court is very energized, because the Supreme Court, in terms of practice directions, lays down the law. Vishakha is one standing example. Vishakha gave rise to a law in 15 years for sexual harassment in workplaces. Similarly, in the case of adoptions, Lakshmikant Pandey, 3 judgments, 86, 88 and 89, led to the Juvenile Justice Act, and now the system of adoptions of children works beautifully through the Adoption Regulations 2017, because under the JJ Act, you have often abandoned and surrendered children who have to be rehabilitated. Central Adoption Resource Agency, CARA, which was an administrative body, is now a statutory authority, and CARA runs a system of inter-country and in-country adoption of children in a very organized way, without any money changing hands unofficially. And the Adoption Regulations 2017 have a very regulated procedure, whereby everything concerning children is gone through very, very systematically and very professionally. Now, the question which I pose to myself is, why cannot we have the same kind of a legislation vis-a-vis children in terms of custody issues and in terms of parental rights are concerned? We did create the Commission for Protection of Child Rights Act 2005. We did create a National Commission and state commissions, but these commissions do not have powers to pass orders. They can only make recommendations. And if these recommendations are not adhered to, they can be taken in a writ further. But the point is, it's too complicated, it's too long-winded. The Commission for Protection of Child Rights Act gives very vast powers I have been a counsel for NCPCR in getting commissions in Punjab and Haryana through a writ petition filed in this court. And Justice Sikri on 9th of April 2013 passed an order asking Punjab and Haryana and UT to make commission, and that's how we got commissions here. But the fact of the matter is, then we need to go forward. But legislation will take time. Parliament is not going to meet, at least in the near future, to look at issues concerning particularly custody of children. So the way forward will be practice directions, maybe another judgment of the Supreme Court, maybe something more loud. The Supreme Court, in a petition filed by parents by an NGO abroad called Bring Our Kids Home, has heard the matter and is looking at passing some directions. 17th of March was the date, and of course that's gone by. So hopefully, maybe again in some matter before the court, this issue crops up and it is taken up, and we might find some general guidelines or practice directions, as we may call them, which will perhaps lead us to a uniform pattern which will be followed throughout the courts. But I come back to the same proposition. We will probably need a uniform pattern of administering justice through child rights, maybe by an e-process, and for which an e-module may be required. We cannot expect the family courts to design e-modules independently. There can be one practice module, there can be one general model, like the Juvenile Justice Model Rules of 2016, and the states free to make their own rules. Likewise, every family court, the best thing would be for the Judicial Academy to make a practice module, and every court to adapt to local issues and requirements, and come back to a more adaptable method in individual circumstances, so that we can all have a workable solution. So this, perhaps, thanks to Mr. Chatrat, may be the igniting point for this perspective and this thought, which might take the way forward. So we have now 15 minutes, and I leave the floor open for questions. Haji Vikas ji.
विकास जी ਤੁਹਾਡਾ mute है जी.
One question has come forth from Vikram Deshmukh. For the benefit of all of us, how would you define joint legal custody and joint parenting? And what does it entail as far as the rights and duty of both parents in custody battle, whether domestic or cross-border?
See, this is a concept which has not found definition in the statutory sense, because as I just told you, the Guardian and Ward Act 1890 is outmoded. The only issue very broadly which might be coming forth is interim custody. Now, custody and guardianship words may be defined, but joint parenting, shared parenting are concepts which are created and coined through judgments, more particularly from different jurisdictions. There are some judgments of the Bombay High Court giving this perspective, but they have not found any clarity in terms of definition. I think they're very loose concepts. And what may more emerge is that these kind of settlements and agreements may come from mutual settlements or agreements, where such like phrases and words may be used by lawyers in coming to joint parenting. And very broadly, joint parenting would mean that the child spends Monday to Friday with one parent, Saturday, Sunday with the other parent, or few hours with one, weekends on a few hours every day if they are available locally for parenting for different reasons. So this is the best concept in a loosely worded way. There is no definitions.
Any other question? Abhishek? Hello? Any other question, please?
Monita has a question.
May I come here?
Mute yourself first. Yes.
Hello?
Yes, yes, I can hear you.
Yes, sir. If in case where both the father and the minor children are US citizens, and the
Yes.
mother also has the permanent resident status of the United States of America, and
Yes.
the mother comes to, they are all of Indian origin, and the comes to India with the two minor children. The father gets an ex parte child custody order from the US court.
Yes.
Then is that order executable in the Indian courts? If yes, how? And if not, then what is the remedy available?
The answer is very straightforward. You can get in touch with me later. You will find I have got this issue settled in a judgment called Dr. Navtej Singh versus Dr. Jasmeet Kaur, where this issue is dealt with.
Okay.
The first question, a remedy is available to you
Okay.
for bringing forth the US court order and trying to seek its enforcement. But then the issue is, will the Indian High Court stamp the order and return the children back? The answer is no.
Okay.
In terms of the judgment laid down by the Supreme Court in Nityanand Raghavan, the Supreme Court says we will hold our own inquiry,
Okay.
whether summary or detailed, and in that we will decide whether we have to send the children back or we have to send the matter to the family court or decide it ourselves on custody. And we will do all this in the best interest of children.
Okay.
So, Manita ji, the perspective is the best interest of the child calls the shots.
Yeah.
If the spouse who has moved the children is able to satisfy the court that she or he as a single parent is a better parent, one, two, he or she has a reason to stay away, or the children are at risk, or there is a threat to the children stay back. But if the court is able to see and perceive that it is better for the children to be with both the parents, it is better for the children to be in control and custody of a family, and most important, the issue of the custody of children should be decided by the jurisdiction which has the closest contact, then the children should go back. So if the children and the family have, let us say, lived in a foreign country, let us say the US for 10 years, and you have only come here for 1 year or 2 years, then the court may be inclined to say, go back. Let the court there take a call, because that court is the best court to decide how to handle the issues relating to the children. And if you are, yes.
Is it the Indian courts or the US court?
US court. You see, you can get in touch with me. I will give you the citations. They are all reported. You can read these judgments. There is a lot of. It took me 3 years to get this principle.
It is Dr. Navtej Singh.
Pardon?
This is Dr. Navtej Singh you talk about.
Yes, Dr. Navtej Singh's case.
It is 2018 Volume 2 RCR 7 page 660.
So Manita ji, Sapan is more active than you.
Okay.
You don't have to pay him anything or give him any consultation for giving you the citations. But Sapan ji, there are 4 decisions. There is a judgment of the family court. There is a judgment of the Delhi High Court.
This is Delhi High Court.
Yeah, but there are 2 decisions. One is in a guardianship petition, then a matrimonial appeal, then there is a habeas corpus decision, and ultimately there is a decision by the Supreme Court sorting out the entire matter. That decision is of 2019, and ultimately there is an order passed on in 2020 also. So but this judgment does expound the entire law. Justice Vipin Sanghi on 6th of March 2018 has written the principal judgment. But the judgment of the family court Tisari, Reena Singh Nag, is a brilliant judgment. She has expounded the rights very well. That judgment has found acceptance in a division bench judgment rendered by Justice Sistani and Justice Seema Singh. And that is also, again, a focus on child rights. Now, these 2 judgments of the Delhi High Court are actually expounding the law very well. But then there is a case of Andhra Pradesh, just one moment, in Lahari Sakhamuri, which is decided by a bench of the Supreme Court by Justice Khanwilkar, where this entire law has again been culled out in a very fine way. This is again a return of the US children. So the law will all be found in judgments.
Okay, Thank you, sir.
There are two persons who are wanting to ask questions directly,
Sure, sure.
but we would like we would go on with the procedure of first question first.
No problem.
Vikram is asking, no, Mr. Goyal is asking, how do you mirror order jurisprudence work practically, where not only for the district court but different benches of the same court disagree with each other? The single bench order, if mirrored and stayed by a higher order bench, what will happen?
You see, the mirror order principle works very well in European and in Canadian and in English jurisdictions. Mirror order is an order accepted by one jurisdiction in another jurisdiction, dehors of sonority, dehors of constitution, and dehors of quorum. It is a merging and arising out of a principle of comity of courts in private international law.
My main question was that even in Indian courts, we don't have the comity system, because usually a single judge would pass one order and the division bench or the superior courts would change the order radically. So if I, as a single bench, have
see, it is like this.
Yes,
under Article 141 of the Constitution, the law laid down by the Supreme Court is final. Now, if a matter is being heard in appeal, intra the matter, obviously a judge can differ. If there is a single bench giving a decision, a division bench can differ. There is no reason of mirroring the order in that perspective.
No, sir. My question is, if a lower court's order is mirrored already, like if
where mirrored where?
In another jurisdiction, in some foreign jurisdiction.
Okay.
And then India's higher court itself changes the Indian order. So the mirror order is existing in, say, the second jurisdiction, but in Indian jurisdiction, that original order is still not subsiding. What happens?
So you say the order has already been mirrored by a foreign court, but
yes,
meanwhile, the superior Indian court sets aside the order which was mirrored.
Yes, sir.
So Mr. Goyal, you need a smart lawyer to get out of that. you probably need to take your order which has been stayed to the Supreme Court and say, listen, the High Court should not have set aside this order because it has already been mirrored.
Okay.
Well, sir, you will have to contact in Sector 16.
Anyway, that is the part. Yes, that's a very interesting question.
Vikram Deshmukh is asking, how relevant is the citizenship of the child in deciding the custody of the minor?
See, the issue is based on personal law and nationality, which are two different aspects. The question is, what happens to your personal law when you become a foreign national? We all know we are Hindus by religion. If I am a Sikh, Buddhist, Parsi, or a Hindu, I am a Hindu. And my Hindu law applies to me wherever I go. And my Hindu law does not go away when I become a German, Canadian, US, or a British national. So my personal law applies to me wherever I go. But the question is, most jurisdictions and foreign jurisdictions take over you by virtue of your presence in their jurisdiction. They say you are in our jurisdiction, you are in our territory, you are a national of our country, and therefore we have jurisdiction over you. So the clash comes, what prevails? Law of nationality, law of domicile, or personal law. Now, there the theories come like which jurisdiction has taken cognizance first. Should comity of courts apply? Now, by and large, if we analyze Nityanand Raghavan, there the things come clearer. This principle of jurisdiction of closest contact, which emerged in Suryavadana in Justice Lukur's judgment, is still protected in Nityanand Raghavan. So the jurisdiction which has the closest contact, maybe whatever jurisdiction, will supersede and override the law of nationality. Now, this may be a very difficult argument to put to a US court or a court in a foreign jurisdiction, because they will say, the child is in my jurisdiction, I don't care. So it may be a debatable issue. But then you have to convince the court that this is the best interest of the children. That is the underlying factor by which you can come out of the jurisdiction issue and say, listen, it is in the best interest of the child that the child should go back to the country of its origin. This is a principle which prevails internationally. Let us understand that this is the problem which doesn't bother us, it bothers the whole world. There are 100 countries which have signed the Hague Convention on Child Abduction. We have not. Why? Why is this? The problem is so big. We need to become a part of it. A system, we need to become a part of an organization. We need to have a law which regulates this. We can't be unbridled anymore. So whether we do it by a law domestically, whether following the Hague Committee report submitted by Justice Bindal Committee, we make the interparental child removal detention bill, or whether we make an independent enactment is for times to come. But ultimately the point driving home is we need a law. We need a statutory law. We can't leave it loose anymore. How will this come? Difficult question to answer. It will take time.
Vishal wants to ask a question directly.
Yes. Yes, Vishal.
Sir, domestically there's an issue. The law is very settled on this regard to say that the parents are natural guardian, be it father, be it the mother.
Yes.
Extended beyond to the judgments, we always say if it's a girl child, of course, the mother has a better right if the child is quite small, young, maybe
Yes.
infant actually.
Yes.
But now my question has two parts. The first part is, whosoever retains the child, the other parent keeps fighting for it for the custody years and years. One
Yes.
aspect is there, even if it is with the father, even if it's a girl child, the mother would continue to fight for years. The second part is, presuming one of the parent dies and the grandparents retain that child. Again, it happens that the other parent is fighting for the custody in spite of this law being so settled. So how to remove this ambiguity and how to have a uniform thing to actually succeed properly in courts, in Indian courts?
That's a very pertinent point, Vishal. Vishal, if you read Lahari Sakhamuri by Justice Khanwilkar, he has got rid of this gender discrimination. Now, Section 6 of the Hindu Minority and Guardianship Act says that the natural guardian of a child shall be the father and after the mother, and ordinarily the custody of a girl child under 6 years of age shall be with the mother. Now, it is the word used is custody, not guardianship.
That's right.
So, irrespective of the fact that the mother is the custodian of a girl child, let us say under 6 years of age, but the father never loses his control as a natural guardian of the child. So that is where you have to draw a distinction. So if you are able to convince a court that I should have visitation, I should have contact, I should have the quality time with my children, I am an equal parent, it's time for you to ask. This is where joint parenting is coming in, which is where shared parenting is coming in. In foreign jurisdictions, they have got rid of this concept of father and mother and superior rights of one parent. It's joint parenting, it's shared parenting. It's 50-50, plain and simple. So we have to grow out of this concept of gender-based parenting. In times to come, we are all trained to do all things, whether be it husband or wife. So a time has now come where restricting a role to a parent to do a particular role may perhaps not be in the best interest of the child. Times have changed, things have changed. We can't be stuck with a concept. Most jurisdictions in the West have got rid of this gender-based discrimination. And if you read Lahari Sakhamuri, this point has been dealt with and this has gone away. Now, your question, fight goes on. You have the issue of parenting, of parents fighting, wanting to see the child, wanting access. See, we do have a gender-based leaning factor in favor of a spouse in most thought processes. It will take time to wean it off. It won't go overnight. You know, judges are also parents. Some of them realize that the preferential treatment of a parent vis-a-vis his gender is not going to be the deciding factor. The best interest of the child should be. Now, coming to your question of whether grandparents are better than the father. Now, this is a question which has to be decided in the best interest and welfare of the child. There is a celebrated judgment of the Supreme Court, I'm forgetting the name, where the grandparents caught the children because the father was accused of murdering his wife. I was an amicus in a matter before the court, which is a very interesting case where the two girl children were taken away by the maternal grandmother when her daughter passed away by means of a settlement between the family. And thereafter, the father kept on fighting, wanting the custody of children. He tried different petitions. The matter came to the High Court. The High Court transferred everything to itself on its board. I was asked to assist as an amicus. The children were talked to, the children were interviewed. I brought both the sides together, did meetings. I reported to the court that the children are very happy with the grandmother. The father has visitation. So we have to balance this out in an individual scenario on the facts and circumstances of the case. There can't be a
set formula,
straight jacket formula solution. You have to weigh, but you need a very passionate judge. I remember doing a Canadian matter in which an honorable judge did not hear any matter for 1 week. He just heard that matter day in and day out. He would run through his list and he would call parties to his chamber. And he said, listen, both sides, relatives, go away. Husband and wife, 2 children, go to Mount View and stay over the weekend and sort it out. And he sent the family back. So you need a motivated judge. You need a dedicated judge who can open it up and get into the matter and see this sensitivity. But this is only possible if the court is sensitive to the rights of the child. So from that perspective, no straitjacket formula. Vishal?
Okay, sir. Thank you. Thank you.
Malhotra ji, only 2 questions because
yes.
Firstly, last 2 questions, no other questions thereafter, since we have already run out of time.
No. Go on. There's no hurry.
So, Mr. Goyal is wanting to ask a question directly.
Hanji, please.
He will ask you, and thereafter, last question is by Anagas.
No problem.
Sir, when we are considering the welfare of the child,
yes,
but if there's some kind of a crime going on which is not recognized in our domestic court, for instance, marital rape, there is a clear conflict between the parents, but that crime itself is not recognized in one jurisdiction. Thereafter, one of the parents, particularly say the wife in this case, moves to another jurisdiction, maybe UK, US, whatever, where that crime is recognized, and she says now claims.
Goyal sahab, come near the mic.
Sorry. Yeah. So in this case, even though it wasn't a crime in India, marital rape is not recognized as a statutory crime, but the wife thereon moves on to a jurisdiction like UK or US where it is recognized as such a crime. Now she is claiming after moving on back because that was an unsafe home, and simultaneously husband is saying I want a ROC, a restitution of conjugal rights decree, and he can always assess that I have already been living in this jurisdiction and this is the best jurisdiction for the child. So what will happen, sir?
I think the jurisdiction which took on the matter first ought to decide the matter.
But Indian will simply say that marital rape is not a crime in India.
You see, you cannot mix marital rape with custody issues. They will go by different parameters. You see, now let us understand one basic distinction. Marital issues will be decided by where the cause of action arises, where the marriage was solemnized, where the parties last resided together, or where the respondent is residing if she is the wife. And this is as far as matrimonial issues are concerned. Now let's come to child custody. Now child custody, Section 9 of the Guardian and Wards Act is very clear that a court shall decide the matter only if the child ordinarily resides, quote unquote, within its jurisdiction. So if a child does not ordinarily reside in a jurisdiction, you have no rights. The court has no jurisdiction. Now, ordinarily resides has been interpreted by the courts to mean ordinarily resides mean residing habitually and permanently, not residing on the date of the filing of the petition, not kept, brought therein by force and detained by force, etc., etc. So you have different issues to decide the child custody matter, and you have different parameters for deciding the matrimonial cause. You can't mix the two. So when a child is brought here and only a child custody petition is filed, that gets decided, and I raise an Order 1 Rule 10 application straight away as a preliminary ground, saying the court has no jurisdiction. If the court has no jurisdiction, court has no authority to pass a matter. And Ruchi Madhu's judgment by Justice T.S. Thakur is very clear. If the family court has no jurisdiction, it can't hear the matter. But this is very independent of the power of the High Court under 226 in the habeas corpus, because that is an extraordinary jurisdiction. There the High Court as parents portray can exercise jurisdiction, dehorse whatever be it, whether the child lives there or the child doesn't live there. But then it may use it as a ground to send the child back or keep the child back inwards. So, Goyal Sahab, the issue will be decided on the statutory law,
Okay, sir.
which governs marriage or child custody. Anji, Vikasji, next.
Sir, the last question is by Anaga. She can come on the board directly.
Yeah, Anaga, please. Hello?
Yeah, good evening, sir. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear.
Yeah, thank you.
Nara is from Bombay, so fire off, please.
No, but she has to come on the video first. We can only fire, otherwise it will be a blind shot.
Sure, sir. No worries.
So everybody wants to see you.
Yeah, sir. Sure, I'm there.
You can put your question by the time you put your picture. Let's have your question. Let me think about your question.
Yeah, sorry. Sir, my question to you is that if both the entire family is Indian by birth and UK nationals, one of entire family is now shifted from UK to India. One of the parent has filed a petition for divorce, including custody here in India. And the other parent is now wanting to move to UK to file and execute her rights there, because majorly the properties are there in UK. So that is the entire issue, that as the properties are there in UK, the one of the parent wants to move to UK and proceed there in UK. So is it possible that as the children are here in India currently, and even both the parents are in India and the petition is already proceeded here, can the other parent still take the move of the other court there in UK?
You see, once a parent has acquiesced, you all know what that means, to the jurisdiction of the Indian court, you cannot shift jurisdictions. You cannot be a bounty hunter. You can't go forum shopping for different reasons. Either you take it lock, stock and barrel in India for custody, for matrimonial causes, for settlement of property, or you take the whole thing there. You can't have a piecemeal decision. You can have a division order in India vis-a-vis properties in India and vis-a-vis properties in England, and you can present it to a court there. You can take a precept that's admissible under the CBC. You can take a precept to a UK court and say, please implement this as part of the settlement. That may be a way forward, but wanting to get the matter reopened in a British court after the matter was settled in an Indian court would not be a proposition worth entertaining. Now, the issue is, has the matter been decided finally? Has the divorce taken place? Has the settlement been done? That again is going to be an issue. But I think ultimately it will boil down to a question of voluntarily submitting to the jurisdiction of the family court in Mumbai or in India, minus your jurisdiction. Because if your marriage was solemnized in India, according to Hindu law, Indian court has jurisdiction. So therefore the court has taken on rightly. And under the Family Courts Act, the court has jurisdiction vis-a-vis your property, vis-a-vis your marriage, vis-a-vis your children, vis-a-vis all rights. Even there is a Supreme Court judgment that even after divorce, matrimonial property will be settled by the family court only.
Right, but sir, here my question is, one parent has already taken this jurisdiction of Indian court, and now the other party has already succumbed to this jurisdiction. Despite that, can the other party still go ahead and file in UK court? Yeah.
Now the answer to this is an anti-injunction suit.
Okay.
if now, just to fill people in, what is an anti-injunction suit? This is a new jurisprudence coming in the family law area. It is a commercial law interpretation arising from Modi Entertainment, where in commercial matters, two parties are not allowed to litigate on the same issue in different jurisdictions, and forum convenience is the principle which comes forth. Now, anti-injunction suits is a developing jurisprudence in family law also. Now, if there are two parties litigating before a court on a matrimonial cause and related issues, let us say India, one party, after submitting to the jurisdiction, goes back to a foreign jurisdiction and starts everything there again. You can file an anti-injunction suit in the Indian court to say that the party should be restrained from proceeding with the matter in the foreign jurisdiction. You cannot restrain a foreign court, but you can restrain the other party. So you can get an anti-injunction from the Indian court, the Indian family court, saying this person should be restrained from raising up the matter in UK because you are seized of the matter. The other party is acquiesced. There are settled principles laid down in Modi Entertainment, and you can actually get an anti-injunction and restrain the other party. If you are not able to get the anti-injunction from the family court, go to the High Court. So, does that answer your question?
Thank you, Malhotra ji. And before we part, and I ask Mr. Amarjeet Virk to propose a vote of thanks, I will just like to sum up.
Yes.
During this all lockdown, we have all tried best of the dishes, etc. But to have the interpretations of law on the entire domestic law, etc., I suppose we cannot have a better chef than you, putting all the ingredients on the right way. And it was a sumptuous meal for food for the brain as well as for the holidays to enjoy. Mr. Virk, just propose a vote of thanks for.
Thank you, Ji. Thank you. And friends, I must tell you, according to me, I must put back in the system what I have learned from the system. So therefore, stay home, talk at home, involve people at home is going to be the answer. And I'll be very happy to do it again on another engaging issue of your choice.
Thank you, Anil Matrasi. Thank you, Anil Matrasi. This is Ramakrishna from America.
Yes, Mr. Ramakrishna. I'm sure you have benefited by this because you are burning on the other end.
Yes. It is there. I'm thankful to you that you have put me to the Zoom. Actually,
good. Very good. Excellent.
I've got some idea. I will take you further with you. Please.
No problem. You are welcome, sir.
Mr. Virk. Amarjeet Virk ji.
Virk Sahab, you have muted yourself.
Anil ji, very informative. God bless. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Virk Sahab.
Yes. Mr. Vikas, you have given a great opportunity to all of us to interact with, have views of Mr. Anil Malhotra, and we are very thankful to Mr. Anil Malhotra to share his views on this very issue, which is very cardinal to these days, because peoples are residing in different parts of the country. Parents are living in different parts of the country, and this is a very burning issue. I say thanks to you for sharing your views to all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Sir, before we part, only for the all the participants, we are on the group, on the WhatsApp group, Beyond Law. Anybody who wants to connect, they can connect, number one. They can also like the Facebook page, number two. Number three, tomorrow, just like you, we would be having Mr. Puneet Bali to speak on the gamut of section 482. So I would say everybody should join it. It will be a treat for everyone to get enriched at home itself. Thank you.
Because you are giving a platform to everybody to have access to justice, to lawyers who would be accessible for very hefty pecuniary packages. So you are doing a great job in providing this pro bono service. May you flourish.
As long as it is assessed, it's fine. It should be in excess. That would be not in the fitness of things.
You have a sense of humor and a sense of humor also.
Humor I don't spread. I said Mr. Malhotra will come, and Mr. Malhotra has definitely come. Thank you, sir. Stay blessed.
All the best. All the best. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vikas ji.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Vikas ji also.
Thank you, sir.